What if? You woke up tomorrow and you felt different. What if? You began to question what others haven't noticed. What if? I began to have experiences I could not explain at a very young age. Our worldview is filled with intrigue, wonder, adventure, and of course, mysteries. However, there are some situations that we cannot fully explain, and it's time we open up this dialogue and talk about our experiences. I am your host, Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. Welcome to Haunted Mysteries. Welcome to Haunted Mysteries Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. This show will air every other week on the Get Haunted Podcast Network. So sit back and relax, and if you miss it, go to the Get Haunted Podcast Network Facebook page or to my YouTube channel under Haunted Mysteries Podcast. Spend an hour every other week with us, delving into what most of us are chasing after, answers to unexplained happenings. This show brings you a bit of chatter, topics, theories, guest interviews, and more. May you be a believer in cryptids, apparitions, UFOs, consciousness abilities, or anything else. Know that there is another person out there who has experienced something similar or a bit stranger. It's not always in our imagination. This episode is pre-recorded. Good evening, everyone, and thanks again for joining me for yet another episode of Haunted Mysteries Podcast. My name is Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. I am the host and the producer of this show. Tonight, we have with us Kent Wilson, and he is quite an accomplished individual when it comes to learning about and investigating the paranormal. He has over 600 investigations under his belt, and he's also writing his second book, which both of them appear to me to be quite fascinating. But before we get into that interview, why don't we learn just a little bit more about my special guest tonight, Kent Wilson. My guest is Kent Wilson. Kent brings over 30 years of experience in paranormal investigation. As a medium and a trained demonologist, as well as the founder of Ken 10 Paranormal, he has led more than 500 investigations across the U.S. He holds degrees in parapsychology and theology, which deepen his understanding of both spiritual and supernatural phenomenon. He is also the creator and host of Paranormal Addicts podcast and the driving force behind the West Kentucky Paranormal Expo and Four Rivers Paranormal events. We had a lot to talk about this evening, so sit back and enjoy. Please welcome my guest, Kent Wilson. Well, welcome, Kent, and thank you so very much for being on the show today.
Thank you. I'm It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I'm glad to have you. I just recently met Kent at a conference in Illinois, and he will be having, and we'll talk a little bit about this, a conference of his own as coming up again. I don't know if it's just the first, second, third. It's not the first, but it's the fourth one. Okay, so he's got the fourth conference coming up sometime next year. We'll talk a little bit about that, and a book coming out, which is real exciting. So, all right. So, first questions first, as usual. I think in this particular case, I would like you, Kent, to talk to everyone a little bit about your background, and then we'll evolve it from there.
All right. So my background is a little bit unique, I guess. I've never really considered it unique, but I've been in this field so long, people keep telling me it's unique, so I guess it is. I was actually born with abilities. I don't remember a time in my life where I wasn't able to see and communicate with the spirits. And as a kid, I definitely considered it was exactly something I wanted. Abilities. And nowadays, I consider them gifts, as we know. We've talked about that before. Now that I've learned more how to use them and stuff, but a little 6-year-old kid doesn't really consider abilities, especially as we've discussed before, being from not only the Bible Belt, but basically the part of the Bible Belt down here in Western Kentucky. I was told to my face at 6 years old that I was a tool of the devil and I was going to hell. So that's not exactly what you want to hear at 6 years old. And but I didn't let that stop me. I mean, if I'm honest, I tried to hide from my abilities and stuff for a while, and then it just got to the point when I was 12 that I had an experience happen, and I just kind of had to accept them. And at that point, I did everything I could to learn how to use them properly and dive into the field. Of course, that would have been 1986.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't a whole lot of resources for me to learn from. But I mean, that's pretty much my background. And from that point, as we've discussed before, I educate myself. I've been on over 600 investigations. I have a degree in parapsychology, 2 degrees in theology, and I'm a trained demonologist. And the old Catholic Church and Bishop Long and all that. So and that's so I wanted to make sure that when I go out there to investigate and help, if it's helping a family, that I'm actually able to help and not hinder. So.
Yeah, and that can happen on these investigations, especially if people are I don't even newbies and or oldies. If they don't exactly know what they're doing, they can actually conjure up a lot more more negativity or something happening, rather than if someone wants someone to come in to get rid of what they think is some kind of unpleasant energy in their home, and then they come in and then they start doing whatever ways that they felt that they've been trained or taught. They can actually do more harm, and they could actually create more disruption into that household. And you've heard of this as well as I for many, many years. I have a question for you. Going back to 6 years old, what kinds of things were you experiencing that made people wonder, not even just people, but made you wonder about where this stuff was coming from? Were you seeing things? Were you hearing things? What were you sensing?
I was definitely seeing things, and I don't even like calling it an apparition. I mean, I guess that's what it was. But to me, and I guess to most people, and when you say apparition, they think like a shadow figure or something you can see through. And most of the stuff I could see, and still to this day, most of the stuff I see are actually just, they're solid. It's like, to me, it's when I see them, they're basically just a human form.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really like using the word apparition, but that's what they were. And the sad, this is kind of funny and sad too. But I tell people, the movie The Sixth Sense.
Mm-hmm.
They really got it. They really got my childhood a lot, because that was pretty much what I was going through. I could see them and they could talk to me, but I didn't really know what they wanted with me, so it scared me. I mean, I didn't have a tent to go under and hide like like in the movie. So, but yeah, I mean, but yeah. So, and I guess it really started out as hearing first because I would hear like playing or like knocking and like footsteps, and then I guess that was them getting my attention. And then once they got my attention, then I would see them.
Interesting. Did you see like I want to say kids, teens, adults, older people? Did you see all kinds of spiritual? I'm still going to use the word apparitions, but spiritual beings. Did they come to you in all forms? And then, do you remember at all any kind of interesting conversation that you had with any one of them? Were they mostly kids, or did it vary?
It varied. It definitely varied. And I guess the first really interesting conversation I had, the one that really made me say, maybe there's more to this than just my imagination, or I had one that he happened to be 13, so teenager kid right in that area, and he went into detail about how he died, and he died in a flood, and he was with his mom and his stepfather, and he specifically said stepfather, and that's kind of an odd way to say it. We may say stepdad, but most of the time we just say dad.
Yep.
He actually specifically said stepfather, and he actually was able to even tell me that he watched his mom and stepfather cross over, but he was afraid, and that's why he was still with us. And so, and years later, once I figured out what I was doing, so he came to me when I was 9, and so when I was 13, I finally researched in papers and actually was able to find articles that actually contributed to exactly what he said about that dying in a flood with his mom and stepdad in their business. And the data in the newspaper still sticks with me because the newspaper was from 1893.
Wow. Did you have those newspapers down in your area, or like at a historical society or a place like that? Because I know we have those types of places here where I'm at.
I went to the public library. They have all of it on microfiche or whatever it's called. Yeah. And of course, at that time, I grew up in Paducah, Kentucky, which is our biggest town around. So they had all the archives for all the little town newspapers too, because actually now they all belong to the same one media thing. So Paducah owns all of them now. But yeah, I was able to go back all the way. They go all the way back to pre-Civil War. Kentucky's a pretty old state, so they go all the way back to that.
I find that interesting. One question on that teen that came to you, when after he had told you about how he died and everything, and everything, you found him in the paper. Did you ever see him since? Because some people have imaginary friends, as an example. Would you consider him someone that just kind of came to you? Where did you meet him? Was he in your house, at a park? How did you discover this kid?
He was actually in my grandparents' basement in Carroll, Illinois. And it was actually, what was interesting is when he came to me, the river was actually at flood stage, so the town was actually flooded. So I don't know if, I get, water can breed energy anyway. So especially since he died in the flood, maybe that was just the right thing. And actually, what it was interesting is many, many years later, once I actually knew what I was doing, I actually investigated a location in Hickman, Kentucky, which is where he was from. And he was a spirit that was back in that house. And I was actually able to help him cross over.
Wow.
I think that's an important. I watch how I phrase that, because, as you know, as a lot of people see on TV and stuff, they make it look like we cross over. We don't have that power. The spirits can cross over whenever they want to. Sometimes they need guidance, and I think that's especially true with kids. I've developed, like, I guess we all have our own theories, but I've developed a theory of my own over all these years when it comes to like kid spirits. The reason we see them, in my opinion, is as adults, no matter what our religious background is, we all kind of understand the crossing over process. We may have seen it on a TV show, we may have seen it on a movie, but we all understand it. Kids don't necessarily understand it because we don't talk about it with them, mainly because we expect them to outlive us. So to me, that's my theory with kids. I mean, I do still kind of buy into that some kids' spirits may be demonic and they're just trying to get your trust. But I think it may be a twofold. I definitely don't think all kids' spirits are demonic. No, I don't buy into that.
Yeah, I don't buy that either. And the reason why I say that is because I showed it at the conference that both Kent and I were at just recently. And, it's a pretty famous picture as far as I'm concerned. It's a little girl and an older man, and they're in an old house that was built by them, the family, back in the day. The little girl died 2 miles down the road. I had her misidentified, and next thing you know, a tornado goes through the area. I'm there taking pictures just to make sure the house is okay, and I didn't see them when I photographed them in this screen window, but my camera picked up on it. And then, of course, when I developed the film and said, how did a ball get up in that corner? I came to realize not only was it not a ball because I was able to expand it on my laptop, but there was an older man also, and they're both staring right at me. But what is very fascinating about this is that, number one, she has the resemblance of my family. It's obvious who she is and where she came from, and I was able to match her up. Number two, I went back the next day, stared right at the window, and said, "You've come to me. I see you. My goodness, do you have a message for me?" And that's when telepathically I learned I was telepathic. The genealogy's wrong, and they were correct. It was wrong, and I misidentified her, corrected that name as fast as I could because things were circulating out there, and the genealogy. But the thing is, of course, ever since that point, and of course the house was just recently burned down, it had to be. You don't take care of it. It just withers over time. So I agree with you. Now, did I have a pull back to that property? Yes, a big pull, because that caught my attention, and it was a relatively haunted property. It really was. So much so that I've had too many experiences. Let me aim this back at you. You've been on so many investigations is there a couple or one or two in particular where you felt like something was, I'm not going to use the word attacking. That's not what I want to use. Encountering you, affecting you, changing you, stuff like that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I've had several like that. I mean, I always like to tell people, especially as long as I've been doing this and with my guests, I try to always go into every investigation with protection. But some of the spirits are more powerful than we realize. Is my first, the closest case I've ever been to that I would say maybe use the D word on. I'm not big on using the D word, but if I've ever investigated a demonic case, it would be this one. And I write about it in my book. But it was when I was living in Indiana, and we got a call from the in-laws of this lady. So what happened? And it was I still get emotional on this one, so you have to excuse me. It was a murder suicide.
Okay.
The husband killed the kids, the wife, and then killed himself.
Yeah.
What was in the police report that we knew going in was they suspected that the husband was messing with a cult.
Okay.
He was depressed. He had just lost his job with John Deere, and he turned to alcohol, drugs, and they suspected that he was dabbling in the occult. Mm-hmm. So we made this trip, and this was still really fresh. So that was probably one issue with it. It was only 3 months after the incident, so we probably should have waited long. But when you get a phone call from in-laws crying, begging for answers, you don't say no. That's what we're here for. So what was interesting, almost funny about the case, if anything is funny, is to get to the house is almost like going through a Stephen King movie. And I say this because we had to go underneath the famous Crying Baby Bridge in Indiana, the one with supposedly the mom, blah, blah. I mean, you have those in every town. But we had to go under the one in Indiana. And then when we got to the house, catty corner from the house was the 1880s cemetery that had been abandoned with weeds growing over it. So it was just kind of, So when we got there, the neighbors had decided to try to take down the house on their own. Mm-hmm. So they had took a bulldozer and knocked it down. So we had to climb through what was the attic. It was the attic window, but when we climbed through it, it led us to the second floor. So when we got there, most of the police tape and blood was still there. Yeah. So the kids' room was exactly what you would expect it to be. Apparently, the father killed the kids in their bed while they were asleep. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm not going to say a whole lot about it. It was what you expected.
Yeah.
And so then we got to the master bedroom, and apparently the husband had made his wife get on her knees. And there may or may not have been sexual acts there, but he shot her in the head. And then he shot himself on the bed. And so all that was pretty much what you expect. And this whole time while we're walking through doing this investigation, I have everybody trying to communicate with me at one time. Mm-hmm. And so while we're looking around, something keeps telling me to move the dresser. So when I move the dresser, there is a 2x2 square cut out of the wall.
Yeah.
And when we pull it open, there's his diary, his journal. I guess as he's a guy, it's a journal. His journal was in there, and he actually has where he's like, I'm going to try this prayer, I'm going to try this practice. He actually has his step-by-step where he was actually. And so I was able to send that over to the cops. And then we were called. I kept getting pulled to the closet. It was like a 1960 farmhouse. So, it had the big walk-in closets. And I kept being called to the closet. And when we got to the closet, on the wife's side of the closet, where all of her stuff were, there was a piece of the carpet that was cut in a square. So when we peeled it back, the padding was also cut in. So when we peeled back both of it, there was actually a pentagon. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a good one, but it was an attempt at a pentagon on the floor. So that's one of the cases I remember more than anything for a couple reasons. One, I was actually able to help the police and stuff. But the most important thing, the reason I hold on to that case the most, is I was actually able to give the in-laws the answers they wanted, because the wife and the kids let me know that they did cross over, and they wanted me to know that she wanted me to let her parents know that they had crossed over and that they were no longer there. So that was good. But since I did not do my detachment prayer like I usually do, I did have an evil spirit follow me to the gas station down the road, and I was vomiting the whole time. And so I did stop at the gas station and cleanse myself and detach and all that stuff. So that was my bad. But yeah, I did have that. And then and I had another one similar that happened in Union City, Tennessee. We got called for that, and it became a priority because it was a kid that was being, she was the victim of the spirits. Like they were even following her to school, and so that became a priority. And long story short, on the story, through the investigation and through the investigation and through research, we found out that the entity, I'm not going to call it demonic, it was just a really malicious spirit. But the spirit that was there was a pastor that actually molested kids when he was at that church. The house was built where the church used to be, and the pastor was actually molested kids, and the neighborhood took care of him, but his spirit was still there, and that's why he was targeting the kid. And that one actually, that not only affected me, but affected most of my team. Like we had to so yeah. So cleansing and protection is very important, and sometimes it's not enough. I mean, you don't know what you're dealing with, so
Yeah, I completely understand. When I was in Zach Bagan's, two things. When I was in Zach Bagan's haunted museum, I wore this really big cross around my neck as I walked in there, and I kept rubbing it. And instead of anything per se protecting me, it almost seemed like to whatever was in that museum took it as a challenge to get at me, which whatever it was did. Took me out. My frequency went down to 0, practically crawling up the back stairs to this other area, went into a trance. I could go on for days. I do talk about that story a lot. So my husband actually at the conference brought up something. He's a very diehard Catholic. He did not want to be there at all because it's a very haunted place. For those of you listening to this program tonight and hearing us talk about this conference that Kent and I were at, a very, very negatively haunted place. And my husband just did not want to go in there at all. He's a good sport, and we had the holy water with us. But the thing is, he said, I saw a lot of people, he said, walking around holding rosaries in their hands. He says, you know what? It's not enough to just hold a rosary. You got to use it. You got to be able to figure out what to say and, use it. And so he noticed that, though, because he's so Catholic and I'm Lutheran. And it's not that I don't believe the same way a Catholic may believe. I just, I don't know. I'm always kind of down the middle on everything and stuff like that. So, yeah, I had occurrences at the conference. I did have something, I believe, either follow me back or awaken something in me where I did get attacked in my bed and breakfast that we went to the night just before the conference and everything. I'm going to ask you the same question. Did you investigate while you're at the Rock Island conference at all? Did you do any of that?
I did, and as you know, and I've revisited this with Rob and a few other people since the thing. I mean, you remember I fell and busted my knee really bad, and yeah. I really think that was something. I think that was something pushing me down because of where it happened, and I had just left the Warren Museum.
Yeah,
and I mean they did a good job of protecting most of the things. But as you know, and I'm not saying anything against those guys, I love those guys. Wade and them are my friends. But some of the things that they chose not to have protection over, was kind of odd to me, especially the mayor and the mayor and so yeah, I can see that. And when I went to it's a place a lot of people don't know about, but it's a place I suggest people should check out is the Urine Shrine in Bristol, Tennessee. I've actually investigated it a couple of times now, and so I don't usually do the Estes method when I investigate because just think about it. They know they know they can communicate with me anyway. So why would I? So we was at the first time we was at the shrine. It was a semi-public event, and I don't usually do public events because it's hard to count the evidence. But it was kind of like a VIP thing for the people at the Smoky Mountain. So it was public, but it was still kind of so it was being hosted by my friend Jimmy Ricker and Outlaw Paranormal and SOS and Matt from SOS Paranormal. Well, since they knew me, anytime there was a volunteer thing, guess who got volunteered? Ken. So we was outside the witches circle, which is outside, and they were doing the essence method, and so they volunteered me to do it. Well, I'm not going to say no to my friend in front of everybody, So I did it, and as soon as I did it, I got attacked by like 13 spirits trying to communicate me at one time. They wasn't really trying to be malicious; they were just trying to communicate. But that's still overwhelming, So yeah. So
how do you hear them come through? Now, there's a lot of people that don't know what the Estes method is. Is that where you put something, I can't remember, over your eyes so you can't see anything, or do you put anything like a headset or over your ears? I can't remember. And are they coming through something? Do you have I don't know if you have a microphone or whatever it is, or do you just, because it's so dark, explain that a little bit to people what that is?
Right. So the Estes method, I guess it's the new it thing right now.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of on the fence about it. So this is what I tell people when they ask me about it. To me, the Estes method became popular because it looks good on video. So when somebody has a video, it looks good. So anyway, but I mean, I understand the premise of it. So the theory behind it is, if you eliminate sight, you'll be able to hear better. So what they do is they plug your headphones into your spirit box, and then you're blindfolded or something so you can't see. We actually, when my team does it, we actually kind of make it a step further. We actually plug it up to
like an amplifier?
Yeah, we plug it up to the portal box.
Yeah.
So we plug it up to the portal box, and then we also incorporate the Paratech VM5 with it, which, for people who don't know what that is, it's ITC. It's actually the better version of the Ovilus. And so for the people who don't know, it's not just a word bank. I've actually had really good 3 years of good results with it, so I actually trust it. So we actually use them all together because if you can get more than one piece of equipment, it cooperates with each other. So yeah, that's what it is. You're blindfolded. You have the headphones on. So and somebody else, usually in another room, is asking you the questions. You have no idea what the questions are. Only thing you're hearing is the answers. And so somebody's writing them down, and they may sound random to you, but they may match the question. They may not. So basically, it just creates a gateway, a portal, whatever you want to call it, where the spirits just talk. So when I did it there at the Urine Shrine, like I said, I actually had 13 spirits trying to communicate with me at one time. That old woman.
What do they want to say to you? Are they just telling you their story, or are they warning you of something? What do they want to relate to you so much?
In that instance, they would just tell me their story. Like one of the names I was actually able to recognize and identify had an interesting story, because her whole grave is actually at the Urine Shrine. The family got tired of her grave being destroyed at the graveyard, so they actually asked the shrine to move her whole grave. So she's buried there, her tombstone's there, and everything. And that was one of the ones that was letting me know that she was there. And then I had one that actually communicated with me even before the Estes method, and her name was Elizabeth. Nobody really talked to her before, but she was just letting me know that she was there, and she wanted people to know that she was there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I find that, and especially if they know if you're like a beam. And so do you think over time, since we can even go back to your age 6 and go all the way over time, especially when you dabble in a lot of investigations, do you find your abilities strengthening or being about the same?
It's definitely strengthened, and I mean, it's strengthened. I've learned how to use it, and when I investigate, I still try to do more of the scientific method, especially if it's a residential. And I know we're pseudoscience, so I know that, but it's still scientific. And so, especially if it's a residential, because it's a lot easier to go to the homeowner and be like, this is what I captured on video, or this is what I captured on the EVP. It's a lot easier to give that to the homeowner than be like, well, I had this conversation with the spirit. But what I do is when I first go into an investigation, I use my abilities to tell me where I need to set up and what I need to set up, and that kind of stuff. So I've learned to trust my abilities, and yeah, and and honestly, if I'm going to do a walkthrough at some location and I have A&E tell me you don't need to be here, I don't need to be there. So.
What's interesting too is that I have found, I don't know if I've really had a lot of occurrences with something really hostile. I would say that when you got tripped or you fell down, I saw your knee that you posted on Facebook, and it kind of had, I have also, by the way, been tripped downstairs before. Now, even if you're on a flat surface, it doesn't matter if you're flat or bumpy or whatever, but I was in a church. I was many years ago a professional. I still am a professional, but I'm not active wedding photographer. So I was in a church by myself, trying to get things situated and ready to go for this wedding, and I did see a black shadow drift down the middle of the aisle, and I didn't think much of it at first until it dawned on me that we were in an area that would not have picked up a reflection or any kind of a shadow cast from anything that would have created that. And then I kind of snooped around a little bit, in fear, of course, wondering where that came from, or tried to do process of elimination. And then it was at the point, though, when I went out of the church where I literally felt something trip me. And I've started, and those churches that have these very steep stairs, you have to go down about 30 concrete stairs and all that sort of thing. Yep, there I went, started to tumble, and my camera went one direction and I went the other direction and stuff. So I'm going to ask you the question: have you visually seen shadow people, individuals, entities, beings, whatever you want to call it, and what do you attribute that to?
So first of all, I want to go with your story there. I like to tell people, in my opinion, churches are some of the most active places you'll go to.
Yeah.
As you notice, I don't like to use the word haunted, because outsiders look at, if you say haunted, they look at it as a negative thing. So I tend to use the word active. So, but yeah, churches, hospitals. To me, those are probably your two most active places. And I think when it comes to churches, the way my reasoning behind that is, well, when they were alive, that was a safe place for them. So that was So they may not stay there, but they may be like their transitional place until they can go home or whatever. But that was a safe place for them, so that's where they return to. But yeah, I have I can definitely see, like, if somebody has an attachment or something like that, and I think it's important. People get it wrong a lot. Whether it's an attachment, an attachment really has to be invited. It can be subconsciously invited, yes. But a ghost can't just attach to you. A spirit, whatever, thanks to, the parapop culture, as I like to call it, we have a misinterpretation of stuff. Spirits, if they're still here with us, the ones that are still here with us, they choose to be here. They can't be, they're not trapped. It's not like you see on TV or on the movies. They're not trapped here. They choose to be here. And really, that's our job as investigators, is to figure out why they choose to still be here. So, and that goes even further if they're attached to somebody. The most recent case I had is we actually had an ex-husband attached to his ex-wife and his kids, and he was actually, and what he wanted was his murder solved. he would. I mean, he wanted people to know who murdered him, and apparently, I turned it over to the cops once I got done with the investigation with evidence. But apparently, it was his ex-wife's new boyfriend that ended up doing it. So that's why that's why he chose to be attached, was because he wanted people to know, and really he wanted his ex-wife and his kids to know more than anything. So, and and that's just like, I guess, a hot point in the paranormal field right now. I mean, even going back to Rock Island would be objects with attachments, haunted objects, whatever terminology you want to use. And, I've investigated that topic a lot, especially, like on my own podcast, especially when I'm talking to like Wade and Dan Riviera, God rest his soul, and, those people. And Dan actually probably had the best theory I ever heard. And for the people out there that don't know, Dan was Annabelle's handler. Dan was the only person that was actually allowed to remove Annabelle from the enclosure, I guess is the best word for it. I don't want to call it a cage, an enclosure. And but even Dan says, he's like, I don't think God would possess a doll or an object. He's like, I think what ends up happening is, and this is mine and his theory together. So what ends up happening, especially when you come to like a doll. So, most of the time when you have a doll, that's that girl's, especially, that's her best friend, growing up, that's what she tells all her secrets to. That's, especially if they're sick, that's all that. And then so all that residual energy goes to the doll. And then at what point, the question is, and this one actually came from Wayne, he's the one who asked this. So at what point is there so much energy in an object that it becomes its own entity?
Yep.
And that's when you have quote unquote haunted dolls. They're not actually haunted, but there's so much energy around it, and so much attachment energy around it, they have become their own entity.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. There are so many things that a person cannot always explain regarding that energy. Yeah, the object itself, if you think about the oils and things on your hands, the most haunted objects that I know of, or at least have been reported, the number one is dolls, because there's so much handling of these dolls and so much emotion and so much whatever coming off the body onto these dolls. The second thing is, you're getting then into your dresser drawers, because your hands constantly open and close these dresser drawers, and you've got whatever it is, every type of mood that you're in, you're opening and closing, and you're impressing this energy into, in fact, it just dawned on me right now. I used to teach a speech class, and there was a podium, wooden podium that we always had up in front of the class. And I said, if you get nervous and you feel like you're getting ill or whatever, redirect your energy into that wooden podium. Start squeezing it and redirecting. And you know what? It just hit me like right now. Here I am having hundreds and hundreds of students directing their energy into this wooden podium that helps them to calm down. But all of this goes into it. Can you imagine how active, these podiums might become, and people would never know the difference? It's very interesting when you think about it. I have one thing to add to what you mentioned about the shadow individual or people. So the church that I was in, interestingly enough, was left open 24/7, 24 hours a day. The church itself welcomed in the homeless people as a place to sleep on the pews, on the long wooden pews during the evening time, in the hopes that they would then leave in the morning and go about doing whatever else they're doing. And it just dawned on me, you mentioned a couple words, invited in. Yeah. And you know how much when you're an alcoholic or you're involved in heavy drugs or whatever, and you come in and you pass out on a pew because you know that that's where you can stay. Who knows what's lifting off of you into that church? And I agree, churches are very active with that. I've captured things in churches all the time, and I have seen personalities. The personality, literally, of the couple, even though it might have been in stress prior to that wedding, that next day, it's like their heads were spinning around. They were angry at each other. They were basically saying, I don't want to get married to you. And all of this went on in the back room a half hour before the ceremony was to begin. It was almost like something took them over and just absolutely made them hate each other. And it took the pastor and it took people talking to them to try to settle them down. It's very interesting what some of this energy can do, but I never told them anything that, I got tripped coming out of here and I saw a really long shadow. They would not have understood. People sometimes, if they're very, I'm not going to use the word closed-minded, haven't had experiences, haven't, wanted to have experiences, it's either a demon or an angel. You just don't get into those kinds of conversations, especially when I saw all of them act up in there in a way that it's either was their personalities or something affected them. Have you ever been affected to the point where your personality has kind of changed?
I have, especially like, so when I went on my first actual investigation, I was 12 years old. Mm-hmm. Me and my best friend, who's no longer with us, we did it together. Like I said, we didn't have anybody we didn't even have like PAPs or anybody to look to. We had Robert Stack on Unsolved Mysteries. One Friday night a month, he would do the supernatural thing. So we had him, and then I checked out every book I could in the Paducah Library and the Heath Middle School Library, and which was mostly like, Ed Lorraine Lawrence books and, a few on parapsychology. And that's what we had. So, so when all of our friends were going to like the haunted attractions and all that stuff, that Halloween, we decided to spend the night and, as opposed to actual haunted house, and it's another one that I actually talk about in my book, because it's an interesting story. It's still like, the story is still relevant today. For whatever reason, it was another like murder-suicide thing or domestic abuse. But the house had been. But when I was 12, the house had already been abandoned for like 6 years. But for some reason, at midnight, every night, like you have to remember, this is abandoned, so there's no power to it. But for some reason, at midnight every night, the living room light would come on and the air conditioner would kick on. It didn't make any difference. It was winter, summer, and I had actually forgot about that until I was writing my book, and my publisher was like, "That would be a good way to end your book, going back to where you all started." So I went back, and the trailer park is not even there anymore, but the trailer is still there, and it's still. So I don't know, but anyway, so we decided to spend the night there, and honestly, looking back, I probably did more harm than good in that location, because I had no idea what I was doing. But when me and Tracy got back to his house, which was just up the road on Oak Hill Road, when we got back up, like I was in a bad mood, but Tracy actually attacked his sister, like physically attacked his sister, which was not like Tracy. And so so I've experienced it, I've witnessed it, yeah. And that's a lot of times when you have a malicious spirit, that's what they do. They change you. They put you in a bad mood, and I'll be careful how I phrase that, because everybody on YouTube now likes to say everything's demonic, and we're talking about less than 1% is demonic. There are a lot of malicious cases, and what I like to explain to people when it comes to a malicious case, this is the way I like to explain it. So you have to excuse my language here. If you were an asshole when you were alive, you're going to be an asshole when you're dead. So that's what a malicious spirit is, and that's what most of your quote unquote demonic cases are. They're not really demonic cases. This is what I tell people, and this comes from somebody that's I've been trained in demonology, And those people don't want to see a true demonic case. They don't want to see it. And if they do see it, they're not equipped to handle it. So, be careful what you wish for, because maybe one day they'll actually get it, and they're not going to know what to do. I mean, they'll probably pee their pants, to be honest.
Not only that, then all of a sudden, if there's an attachment involved, and something decides to attach to them or continue to follow them or to be, make their life miserable for whatever reason. This is what people don't get and they don't understand, is that you can't turn it off and on like a light switch sometimes. You can try and turn it on, and the minute you turn it on, that's really great and dandy, but what are you going to do if you can't shut it off and turn it off and leave it where you found it? It's not all fun and games with some of this energy out there. And I agree with you. It's usually the 1%. It's always the 1% on everything. That's a general rule of thumb here. It's not always what people think it is, and it's not. My nephew was telling me over the weekend. I was at a wedding. And he said, yeah, we're going on a ghost hunt. And he's like in 10th grade. We're going to go and we're going to hear about the story of this haunted library or whatever it is. We'll use library. And he was all kind of interested in that. And then I told him what I did. And of course, it was hard for a kid to wrap his head around what his aunt does and what she knows, because they only know it from a certain point of view, level. But when you're in this for a long period of time and you've been doing this for years, your perception of it changes dramatically. I'm going to send him a book that I had down at Rock Island, and it's a very simple book, easy to read. Someone his age would be able to understand it a little bit better. But what would you say? How do you know what? I had mixed emotions of watching, and this is any conference, everybody. This isn't just Rock Island. This is every conference. When somebody brings their child into, my God, a place that could be easily attachments or things could happen. What do you have any thoughts about children or young teens and ghost hunting or searching when they don't really understand fully what they might be getting into?
Well, yeah, and I like that question because, a lot of times I think when I say I started out as 12, everybody's like, oh, yeah, no, that's not a good age to start out with. If I could go back and do it, probably not. But I'm also kind of an exception because I had the ability. So, So I didn't get to choose myself. But, yeah, we have a good friend of mine who has a team here where I live. They're actually doing a ghost hunt at the library for teens. And I am not a fan of that. I do believe that most kids, all kids, have the ability to see. They may not understand what they're saying. I tell parents all the time, if your kid has an imaginary friend and they can go into a lot of details, that might not actually be an imaginary friend. But I don't. But opening them up to possibilities, especially like Rock Island, especially, because like you said, that place is not a nice place. Mm. So open it up to the. I mean, if it is a demonic being, or even if it's a malicious being,
right.
They see a kid, they can take the form of a kid and get their trust, and then that's when you get in trouble. And so I'm not a fan of it. My son actually investigates with me, but I didn't let him start until he was 17. Mm-hmm. And really, he just runs the video camera. I don't let him do. I won't put him in danger. I mean, I don't like it. I'm not going to tell somebody how to parent their kids, but I definitely don't recommend it. And if you do it, please be careful. And that's why anybody that's getting into the paranormal field, it's not really safe anymore to do it by yourself. At least go find a reputable team, or go on a couple of public investigations first to make sure that's really what you want. I'm not a public investigation person, but it's good for the people who are just getting into it. And yeah, yeah. Don't put yourself in danger. There's no purpose in it. I won't put my team in danger. I mean, I, I am bad about putting myself in danger, Kelly. But when it comes to my team, I won't. I the only investigation I ever ended without it was it was not a residential investigation. If it was a residential, I would have stayed. Period. Because when it's a residential, I'm there to help the family. If I leave, who's going to help them? So if it was a residential, I wouldn't have done it. But this was just investigating an abandoned hotel. Thankfully, they don't allow investigations anymore because it was a dangerous spot. They actually closed. They actually shut down investigations once before because of how violently haunted it was, and then they opened it back up. And but I like to tell people what you have to understand about this location is they want it to be violently haunted. Uh, they have five verified deaths there, whether they're by death, whether they're by suicide or murder or whatever. And when I verify a death, I do it by coroner reports and police reports. So when I say verified, I mean verified. Of the 5 verified deaths they still have 3 bloodstained mattresses. They have a bloodstained bathtub, and then the 5th one, the guy drunk himself to the point that he hung himself in the closet beside him, and they still have all of his liquor bottles, and they encourage you to bring a liquor bottle for him. We didn't do that because that's provoking, and so when we went there, what they like to say, the little catchphrase that they use is "oh, ghost bite," and I didn't believe that because, yeah, but I did get my ghost bite, Kelly.
You
It
did?
didn't feel like a bite. I did. I'll see if I can show it to you. Can you see it? No, you can't see it. Yeah, it's on my leg, and it didn't feel like a bite. I like to tell people that. Don't think it felt like a Indian burn, like a really deep Indian burn. And I was in the bathtub, the bloodstained bathtub that I mentioned. And it started out as just a regular EVP session. And I'm a very respectful investigator, as you know. I talk to the spirits just like I talk to you. So it started out with me asking if I could get in the bathtub, and the response I got was yes and no. I'm like, well, I can't do both. So I got in the bathtub and I talked to her for probably 10 or 15 minutes. Well, she told me to get out. Well, I don't usually get out the first time because I've drove a long way, but I want to be respectful. So when you tell me to get out 3 times, I get out, or I at least move to the next room. I don't necessarily leave it. So eventually we got to the third get out. So I'm trying to lift myself out of the bathtub, and it's one of the old-fashioned bathtubs with the coral feet, all that stuff. So I'm lifting myself out of the bathtub, and as I'm lifting myself out of the bathtub, on my calf, I feel what feels like a really deep Indian burn. And when I get out and we get back to our base where we have electricity, we look down and it actually looks like a double bite. And that was the beginning of our night.
Oh, that was the beginning.
Thank you for watching and listening to Haunted Mysteries Podcast. The content, music, and creative sound effects, as heard on the Haunted Mysteries Podcast, are copyrighted and licensed commercially to Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. Please do not reproduce in any manner without the express permission of Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz, Diamond Point Entertainment, LLC, Paranormal Universal Press, LLC, Haunted Mysteries Podcast, and or any affiliated networks such as the Get Haunted Podcast Network. The opinions and information expressed by the guest, hosts, and sources as heard and seen on the Haunted Mysteries Podcast are not necessarily those of Diamond Point Entertainment, LLC, Paranormal Universal Press, LLC, Haunted Mysteries Podcast, and the Get Haunted Podcast Network, as well as its producers. Although the content of the shows may be interesting, the information and opinions within are deemed for entertainment purposes only. Subscribe to continue your enjoyment and interest, and thank you for making Haunted Mysteries Podcast part of your day.